All right. Hey, what's going on? Good afternoon to everybody out there joining us live today. Hope everybody is having a good weekend. Of course, it's Memorial Day weekend. I put a post out today to talk about what that means to me and kind of what I think through over this weekend. Aloha, Dave Zelaya. Welcome. I see you in the comments. Joe Morse, welcome, says you just finished up Ghost Fleet, so that's pretty awesome. Hey, for everybody that's out there watching, I'm going to ask two things of you. Number one thing is to give us a like. It just helps us to get to kind of share this and to make sure other folks are seeing it. And then number two, if you have a buddy, which I'm sure you do, who has read Ghost Fleet or they've read LikeWar, they've read one of those that should be here that isn't, just go ahead and tag them and let them know that we're doing this so that they can join into this conversation as well. So today I am very happy to bring to the show an author that the vast majority of us are very familiar with, having read his work. I'm going to go ahead and bring him on now. It's Peter Singer. Peter is, again, yeah, he's an author that's done a lot of great work, a lot of things that we've all read, and today we're here to talk about a new book that he's got coming out. Hey, Peter, how's everything going up there in DC?
It's going as good as can be, given everything. But I first want to thank you for having me on, and everybody joining us here on Memorial Day weekend. Really pleased to do so, and honored as well. So thanks again.
Yeah, thanks to you for coming on. So let's kind of jump right in, and let's talk about the new book. So it's called Burnin, and can you just give us an overview of kind of what it's about and when it's coming to us?
Sure. So, Burnin is a new kind of book. It's a smash up of novel and nonfiction. So it's a techno thriller. The story follows a veteran turned FBI agent who's tracking down a terrorist through the streets of a future Washington, D.C. So you get that kind of excitement. You also get to see you follow the two of them, a little bit of a cat and mouse, through places that might be, a lot of folks I think in this audience have been served in DC, so there'll be some places that are familiar to them or people that have visited it. So, everywhere from the National Mall to Arlington, to places that are familiar to anyone, but what are they going to look like 15 years out, like a Starbucks? Also takes you places that some people have never been before, but are real places. For example, inside the White House Situation Room, what's the rug like on the floor? So it's a story, it's a novel, but baked into the story is over 300 explanations and predictions, along with the end note to document how it's drawn from the real world. So through the story, you learn about everything from how does AI actually work? What are the planned applications of AI, IoT, everywhere from military to policing to retail to restaurants to what's it going to be like in your home? What are the toys your kids are going to play with 15 years from now? Most importantly, what are going to be some of the challenges and dilemmas that again will be faced by everything from the military officer out in the field who has all this technology, but oh, by the way, the bad guy has some of it too, to what is it going to do to business? What is it going to do to your family life? And so the idea is by blending these two together, you get entertained, but you also walk away from it learning more. So I'm a parent. I think of it as a little bit like sneaking fruit and veggies into the smoothie. You get the good taste, but you also get the good stuff.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And what I think is so cool about this style of writing is that by threading this and blending it into a future environment, it allows folks to imagine AI in ways that they perhaps didn't think possible, or these futuristic technologies. It allows them to see kind of the practical application. And I'd be interested to see, based on your research for the book and what you guys have put in there, what you think are some of the implications of AI that are relevant now or going to be increasingly relevant for today's military officers.
Oh, wow. Well, the first is to start off from that idea of what is this? And my co-author on it, August Cole, who we did Ghost Fleet together as well. August used to be the defense beat reporter for the Wall Street Journal, so very much in this space. He coined the term "thick int," So you think of human intelligence, you think of SIGINT, signals intelligence. You have all these different tools of intelligence that are about collection and analysis, explanation, sometimes prediction. And FICINT is using narrative, using story combined with research to give you that analysis and explanation and maybe prediction. And again, I need to be very clear here. It's just like SIGINT, just like human. It's only one tool. It's not the only thing. It's not going to replace nonfiction, but it's a useful tool that's out there. And I think why it's useful, and it hits what you're asking about, is a couple of things. One, it takes something that seems it's strange to put it that way, but it allows you to move forward and visualize a future world, but in a way that more people are likely to read. The hard truth of it is, for those of us that write memos and make PowerPoints, is that no one ever said, "Oh man, that was such a good PowerPoint. You ought to read it by the pool too," or in your case, out by the beach. No one ever said, "Man, that Excel spreadsheet, it totally kept me up late at night. Oh man, it was just so good." No one ever, enjoyed it, or if they did, they've got something wrong with them. They certainly never wanted to share it in the same way you do a good story. And we saw that to be the case with Ghost Fleet. We're starting to feel that with this Burnin book, people sharing it, wanting to talk about it. But what's key about it is it also, strangely enough, makes things feel more real. Let me give an example. I'll give two examples. One is the idea of unmanned aerial systems and how they're starting to proliferate and the uses that will be made of them. It feels like very much science fiction. I mean, in fact, you and I are on the 100-year anniversary of the creation of the word robot itself. And yet, we've started to see them deployed out into conflict by us, by adversaries. ISIS carried out more than 300 drone strikes during the Battle of Mosul. But it's also being applied into not just ISR and strike, but roles like logistics. I was at a Marine Corps landing exercise, and they utilized small drones to carry a single MRE out to a Marine in the field. That just changes logistics. Oh, by the way, same plan for an Amazon in Northern Virginia. Amazon just is testing out using them for delivery. And so the point is that this feels very futuristic. So what we do in the book is depict it. A scene where two characters are talking and one flies away in the distance. But the smash up of fiction and nonfiction means that when we describe what that drone looks like, we have a footnote that says, okay, that's not just what Singer and Cole dreamed up. Here's Amazon's patent for it. So it really is going to look that way. Or it might be a dilemma or an issue that someone faces. A great example of this is something I know a lot of folks in the military are already starting to deal with, info overload.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is a scene. The great thing of fiction is you only choose the early scenes because you don't want to spoil the whole book. So the opening scene of the book, our main character is at Union Station, train station in DC, and they're trying to pick a terrorist out of a crowd. There's been an alert that a bomb is going to go off. You can sort of see that as a really interesting situation, but they start getting all the data coming in. The data coming in from face recognition software. They've got their commander buzzing in their ear. They've got not just face recognition software, they've got text data of everything from where they are to it's identified, oh, by the way, this person is Josh. Here's their criminal history. And
Right.
so through that scene, you get to see two really important issues that loom. Again, for people in the military, but whether you're a police, whether you're walking through a shopping mall. One is info overload. Yes, you've got all of this data, but at a certain point, it could be too much. And then the second thing is what they call algorithmic bias. So just because the data is marking someone in the crowd as a person of interest doesn't actually mean they're who you're looking for. Algorithmic bias is when the AI steers you to a biased outcome. It might be a biased outcome in terms of lead you down a wrong direction. The funny version of this for people that are fans of the TV show The Office is when Michael and Dwight were in the car and the GPS drove them into the lake, right? So there's
Yep.
that kind of thing. But there's also more pernicious versions of algorithmic bias. There's one system that was used to screen people for bank loans and AI, and no one told it to be racist, and yet it was screening African Americans out of the pool. It's because there was bad data, bad design, and so you can quickly see kind of military versions of this of biased data that steers you down a certain direction, maybe a route, maybe it's marking someone as interest, and yet it's an outcome where the AI is steering you the wrong way. So kind of what I'm getting at is everything I just said hopefully felt a little more real to people, and they could visualize it in a way that would be different than getting a memo on it or me saying, man, go read this academic white paper on it. So it's drawing
Yeah.
from real world research, but
Yep.
you get the real feel of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Tracking, and there were several good comments. You have never seen my PowerPoint slides, so I will show you something that will make you want to shook in there. There's a one of my old bosses, and if anybody can name the retired general
So I
officer
can
in the
actually, there was a funny. I hate to interrupt, but I used to serve in way back in the
yeah.
Pentagon, and the Army major that was in the cubicle right beside me had he'd stuck it to his cube, and it said it was a play on a Patton's quote, and it was no one ever I'm trying to play it was no one ever won a war by making PowerPoints for their country. They won by making some other poor dumb bastard make PowerPoints.
Precisely. So I'll give 5 bonus points to anybody in the comments who can name the retired general who one of his things that he always used to say is the fog of war used to be not enough information, and now the fog of war is too much information. And I feel like there's probably a ton of folks online, and I'm in the same ballpark, that have gone through this difference throughout their careers, where starting out in Iraq, it was you'd have a couple things come in, you're on the radio, but you're just guessing what's happening, and kind of ramp that up to unmanned aerial platforms, and then SIGINT and human, and on and on and on, to now in replication of a high-end conflict. There's data feeds everywhere that are overloading your system, and I really think that'll be of the utmost relevancy to people in this audience, people who are participating today, and how they are able to use tools to sort that information.
And so that's what looms, that you get this irony that as we have more and more systems out there that are sensors, and again, it might be on the battlefield, more UAS, more UGV, but oh, by the way, sensors that you are wearing, tracking you, to sensors that are on everything in the environment, smart buildings, smart vehicles. You get this in the military side, they call it the battlefield of things, of the Internet of Things. On the civilian side, we call it the Internet of Things. You get literally billions upon billions of sensors, and they're collecting everything from visual data to it might be movement, it might be electronic data, where this signal came in or not. We look at what's looming. It might be thermal data, scanning for people for fevers, you name it. So the point is, we're going to have even more. Take all the data, what feels like overloading right now, and put it orders of magnitude of an increase because of this shift towards IoT automation. But it leads to an irony. The answer to that is actually AI. So we have it's creating it, but it also means what sifts through all that information for you, whether it's that UAS, instead of sending all the video back to you and saying, you figure it out. It moves to it only sends when it sees something of interest. It marks it of interest. Or it's look, it's not just marking things of interest, it's taking actions to aid you. Again, not sci-fi. There is a system that sifts through all the different data coming into the talk, coming into the operations center, and the history of similar data, and basically says, okay, based on what happened all the times in the past, hey, Army officer, you called for a fire order. So here I've pre-written the fire order for you. It's
Right.
not Terminator. It's not the artillery unit firing on its own, but you saw how it sifted through the data and came up with a course of action for you. And
Yeah.
so, again, that feels very sci-fi. I know, by the way, I'm the son of an Army JAG officer. You can quickly see on one hand, man, that's going to be real useful. It's going to make that decision cycle. It's
Mm.
going to make that OODA loop go much faster. On the other hand, that feels like a court martial waiting to happen, right?
Right.
If
Yeah.
it goes wrong, and you'll get this sort of interesting outcome where if it goes wrong, the Army officer will say, not my fault. The AI is the one that
Yeah.
wrote the order. I took
Yeah.
all the information. Now, what about the situations when you don't listen to the machine?
Right.
If that goes wrong, we'll say, you took greater casualties because you didn't listen to the AI. It's there for you. It's there to serve you. And so again, this stuff feels like sci-fi, and yet it's not multiple generations out. It's already being woven in. And so, again, what Burnin is about is exploring, move that forward. How does it affect what plays out? How does it affect the human in these situations? And what are the kind of questions that they're going to have to solve that are going to be very different than, again, an officer, a police officer, a parent had to deal with, 10, 15 years back.
Yeah, and it's interesting that the conversation, it seems to very rapidly, a couple folks in the comments have already kind of hit it, to like a morality in warfare or an ethics perspective. And what's interesting, and tell me if your research pointed the same way, is that I mean, like you said, whether or not we are pursuing, the world is moving in a direction that is maximizing the use of these tools. And it's very interesting. The commander who receives the information from AI sources and does or does not make a decision, versus the commander who receives it from human collections of various sorts and does or doesn't make a decision. It's interesting how we think differently of that from an ethical perspective when it is informed by machines. Any thoughts there?
Oh, wow. It's spot on. And kind of the way to think about it is, so we'll call it a couple of ways. One is every time you get a new technology, a new tool, you get these legal, ethical, moral questions about its use and application. Think back to the bow and arrow. Actually, originally it was just the crossbow, and then when they started the longbow, the Pope tried to outlaw both of them unless they were being used against infidels. Think back to more recently. You're in Hawaii, a great example of this. Um, the submarine. The United States enters World War One because of Germany carrying unrestricted submarine warfare out. We say this is such a violation of the laws of war. We're joining in. December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor happens. Do you know how long it took us to change our mind about the legality of unrestricted submarine warfare? 5 hours. We basically, changed our mind because now we're losing and we're really mad about it. And
Right.
so, to get it, you always get this, and we see it now with computers and all the issues that they raised for the law and ethics of cyber warfare. So you'll have this with the emergent systems, robotics and AI, but there's a twist. none of these prior tools had were intelligent, were unleashed to operate out there on their own. So you get new kinds of questions that we never wrestled with before. And they
Hmm.
basically fall into three categories. One is machine permissibility. What should this ever more intelligent machine be able to do on its own or not?
Right.
Where can I deploy it or not? Should it be allowed to fire or not? Those sorts of things. Second is machine accountability. Who owns it? Who owns the fruits of it? Who gets all the data that's being collected about you, your organization, your kids? So if your kid's robot toy is always gathering data, and it will, who owns that data? Who can tap that data? But then there's the flip side: who owns it in terms of the accountability if something goes wrong? And again, this is a great question that we're already starting to scratch at a little bit in Teslas that have gotten into car wrecks that people have died, to
Hmm.
decision aids used out on the battlefield. Is it the officer at the point of action that's responsible, or no, is it the software programmer 2 years back? Are they responsible? And then the final weird, strange question is machine rights. Um, and this is where the U.S. military meets sex bots. And you went, whoa, this took a big turn. What I'm getting at is we've never before asked, what is it okay for us to do to our machines? Because they're machines, they're tools. But you have, whether it's the question of sex bots to unmanned systems in the U.S. military, are people allowed to do things to them or not? And what are the consequences? The US Air Force, for example, has concluded in its policy that unmanned system in the US military has the same right of self defense that a manned platform does. In
Right.
fact, it's not just that you shoot at it that we have the right to shoot back, but even if you target it with radar, but don't shoot, we still have the right to shoot back. And so, it sounds like such incredible science fiction, and yet here we are. And so you have all these layers with legal ethical questions. But oh, by the way, and again, I think this particularly applies for people in the military. There's what the sci-fi writer William Gibson said. He said the future is here, but it's unevenly distributed, and that uneven distribution is something that we can apply over into these legal questions because, to put it bluntly, different people and different organizations and nations are going to think about the law and ethics and conclude it differently. So what the U.S. military thinks is permissible, or its role for accountability, might be
Right.
different than, say, the Chinese military.
Right.
It also might be within the U.S. Their face recognition and backtracking your data. Weirdly, the US government might have less access than a private company. And so, this uneven distribution is one of the things that we'll see out there.
Yeah, interesting stuff. So swinging back around to the book, I'm dropping in the comments now, the reviews, and what I think is interesting with what I've seen is that you have like this broad spectrum audience that's given feedback from like the General Retired Petraeus of the world, all the way over to like fictional people who do fiction stuff, the creator of Lost, etc. Why do you think it has such a kind of a wide pull of people who are interested?
Yeah, that's been one of the most fun aspects of this. And just like you would fight anyone by saying your PowerPoints are the best. I will fight anyone with we have the most bizarre collection of early reviewers. Just you said you've got the on the policy real world side. Former current heads of U.S. Navy, U.S. Marine Corps, Army Cyber, CIA, NSA, At the other end, writers of Lost and Watchmen, the new Star Trek movies, World War Z. And these are two groups that do not normally meet, right? It's almost like a weird, General Petraeus and Gary Kasparov walk into a bar. They don't. This is not what normally happens. But I think it goes back to that concept of the book. Um, for some people, it's just the fiction side. For some people, it's just a techno thriller. It's an escapist read. I won't plot spoil, but I will say there is no pandemic in it, so you can read it without thinking about what's swirling on around us. And for a lot of those people, they will never ever go to the back and check the end notes out, and that's great. That's fine. They'll be entertained. The same thing happened with Ghost Fleet. For other people, it's the utility side. It's the useful side of the concept of useful fiction. It's helping them to understand and visualize. And again, it might be a macro concept, like these issues that we talked about of what does the future of human machine teaming look like, algorithmic bias questions, all these issues that we have to understand. And when I say that, I say that not just kind of my own personal feeling, but I think it's because of a major issue of disconnect that's out there. Pretty much every major organization, uh, whether it's the U.S. military to Fortune 500 companies, say that AI is the key to our future. It's written in the National Defense Strategy as an example,
Right. Yeah.
and yet most people don't understand it or its applications. The numeric example of that is they took a poll of leaders, and 17% of them self-reported that they even had a familiarity with AI, let alone its dilemmas, like we were talking about.
Right.
That 17% is probably a lie. It's if 17% of leaders are saying that they get it, it's probably lower. But again,
Right.
the reality is that is a big delta between U.S. government to every Fortune 500 company saying this is key to our future, and only 17% saying I even have a familiarity with it. So it's that ability to get it. It might be a macro issue, or it might be just a detail. We were we did a YouTube with a group of special operators. And for them, one of the cool details was, okay, what's the next sniper rifle going to be like? And again, they were like, that sounded really sci-fi, but I checked the footnotes and okay, I guess that's what comes.
Yeah, and that's I think it's a neat. You mentioned a couple times over the footnotes, and that when I read Ghost Fleet, it's been a couple of years since the first time I read it, and I read it on my iPad. And I remember the first bit, I'm like, man, this is a super enjoyable story. I didn't know much about how you guys write, et cetera. And I'm like, it's got a lot of footnotes though, so I was a couple chapters in before I started to look at how you had pulled in all of this real world technology and systems, et cetera. How do you write like that? How does that work to be able to take bits and pieces of technology and weave them together into a story that's interesting? Can you talk to us a little bit on that?
Yeah, so it's basically like a dual track that's going on. So you're doing research in much the way that anyone in the audience was taught at university or whatnot, at the war colleges, and that research is a mix of methodologies. So, for example, for Burnin, where we built a data set of we tried to pull every report that we could find about what is automation going to do to jobs, for example. So everything from what did the World Bank predict to what did consulting companies like McKinsey predict to what did Oxford University predict. And then they're plugged into a big Excel spreadsheet, and you see kind of the things play out. Or it might be, okay, let's pull literally the plans for the next sniper rifle. What's the contract that's been announced? Or Amazon's patent application for the next drone. Or it might be not already in written form somewhere. It might be in verbal. The kind of things that people talk about over beers that might not be out there. So just like in Ghost Fleet, it's not just the tech, it's what happens is drawn from things that have already occurred, or plans that are real. So, again, not going to plot spoil too much, but there's a series. Our bad guy. This is a domestic set story. It takes place all in the Washington D.C. area. Our bad guy is a new kind of terrorist, and in particular, what he's able to do things that would have not been possible in the past because of this tech change that we're talking about. But every one of his attacks is pulled from real world things. So the source there might be a report of a certain kind of hack that's already happened. So we'll plot spoil a little bit. Israel just got the water treatment plants in Israel just got hit from a attack that went after the chlorine levels. Now, if anyone thinks the little small town water treatment plants upriver on the Potomac have better cybersecurity than the Israeli government, I've got really bad news for you. And so in the book, certain things play out, but it might not be a written report like that. It might be what people talk about like over beers. Man, you'll never guess this. You'll never know that. So we talked with someone who worked on the not the water treatment side, but the water exit, the storm water sewer systems of Washington, D.C. And he revealed some pretty crazy stuff. So you got that like research side going, and then you have the world building of the fiction. You're creating your characters, you're creating your scenes, and sometimes they're kind of going back and forth where you come across something in the real world and you're like, man, that's going to be fodder for a really great scene. That threat report of something, whoa, that feels like a Hollywood-esque scene. Other times you've built the scene and then you're like, I need to populate it. So there's a scene that's a firefight, and so we're pulling, okay, if it's a firefight 10, 15 years out, okay, what kind of gear will they have? And the gear, whether it's that next sniper rifle. What I love is the wonderful fact that the next generation of soldiers will have a weapon called the next generation. If you're the new next generation squad, it's called that. But to them, it won't be next generation because it'll be from the last generation, right? And you think they're not going to have fun with that? You think they're not going to mock that? Yeah.
Mm, that's awesome. Okay, so let me. So I got a hard one for you. If you had to pick, if you had to pick one technology or one thing or one tool in your research for this book that is, if we're not learning about this as as kind of the as the leaders in the army and the joint force that are watching this, if they're not learning about it, they're going to be behind the power curve here in the next couple of years. What would be that thing or that tool or whatever that's pertinent to them?
So I'm going to cheat and not choose a specific technology, but a technology problem or issue or opportunity. Um, so it's human machine teaming. Um, you will see some roles, and again, this is already in motion, some roles completely replaced, some roles where the human will be aided or supplemented, and some roles where there's going to be a form of human machine teaming of some kind. But that teaming will come in lots of different kinds. It might be where the human is delegating it out. A swarm of tiny UAS or UGVs that you push out ahead of you to scout. And so it's not the predator flying overhead. It's lots of teeny tiny ones that maybe scout route for you or something like that. It might be so it's pushing it out that way. Um, or it might be that example of that unit getting MREs sent to them by small UAS. Um, or the teaming might be like police officer and police dog or military working dog. you're working alongside. You're not, sending it out, go away. It's there with you, but you're tasking it out to do certain roles, each doing different roles, but working as a team. Um, or it might be where it's like a concierge at a hotel or a staff officer and a talk, uh, not making the decisions for you, but sifting through the information and giving you recommendations, right? And I gave that example of maybe it's a fire order, or a different one that I saw at an exercise was it was a military version of a Waze map. It would project recommended routes to go, but unlike Waze that gives you recommendations based off of traffic time, it was recommended based off of expected casualties.
Hmm.
So it might be giving you courses of action that it is saying, based on everything, this is the best thing that you ought to do. And kind of again, like that Waze app or like that concierge at a hotel, you'll probably listen to it because you'll be like, well, it knows better. But oh, by the way, just like that concierge, um, it may be giving you that recommendation because of other things at play. The concierge maybe because they get a cut from everyone they send to that
Hmm.
restaurant, or on the
Right.
Waze map, it may be because something Clausewitz would tell us: there's fog and friction. People sometimes give false reports into Waze maps to have so that the traffic doesn't go through their neighborhood, right? Same thing you can imagine a battlefield situation where the enemy spoofing to send you down a certain route.
Right.
The final idea of human machine teaming is what the Air Force has talked about of wingmen working together, not police dog style, but kind of a true, it's going alongside you. Um, and again, it's not just, wingmen in the air. You might see that in a unit. Okay, you have all of these different models that are out there. We've got a couple of things. One is, which one is the best model for different roles and different situations? And that's a big question of doctrine moving forward. Is it better to push out ahead or have it beside you, whatever?
Right.
Second question is, which one are how do you react to the adversary using one model, right? So there's certain advantages but also vulnerabilities of different models, and you'll go after that. Maybe the US picks a different model than China does. And then the final issue of human machine teaming is, what does it do to the human in the relationship? Our main character, she's, as I said, she's a veteran. She served, and so she's used the systems, um, and so she knows their tools, um, but tells herself, you know, don't be like those people back in Centcom who would name their robots, or would give their blown up UGV a funeral. And again, these are things that we've seen. For my last book, for a prior book called Wired for War.
Hmm.
In Afghanistan, there was a unit that gave a funeral to a military bot. In Iraq, someone a pack bot got stuck in the mud, and someone ran out under heavy machine gun fire to rescue their pack bot.
I have been
This
on
was
the other side of an IED on numerous occasions, and I have witnessed that very thing occur. So I can I can attest to that one.
and again, that's with machines that are remote controlled, don't look like people, don't speak. And so, our main character, she knows it. She's, saying, don't be like them. But also, she/you, the reader, can't help yourself because we're humans. And this final part is like we put identities on top of them.
Hmm.
So the example I give of my personal life is a few days back, our Alexa, I was using it to time while I was cooking, and the alarm goes off, and I say, Alexa, alarm off, and it won't. And then I just started, and I was having a bad day, and I started yelling at Alexa, right? And like I would never yell at the toaster, but I yell at it because I can't help myself. I put a human identity on top of it.
Right.
Even the name's an identity. Alexa has a female
Yep.
voice. Machine, right?
Well, hey, this has been an awesome session. I really appreciate it. I look forward to reading the new book and continuing to learn. Any final thoughts for the audience?
Oh wow. I just one really do appreciate the opportunity to join you all and speak about it. I hope you give the book a chance. It's obviously a really strange time to have a book come out. We actually had a debate on whether to push back the release date. You may have noticed a lot of the books and movies have pushed back because of everything going around us. And we talked about like if the Wimpy Kid books and James Bond move, why should we dare to push it out there? But for us, it goes back to that aspect that we started the conversation on, is that one, we think we hope it has some utility for people. We hope it is a useful read. I think all the more useful given that coronavirus seems to have speeded up a lot of these forces of automation, and they're being deployed out there more rapidly. Whether you think in business or there's robots being used to police curfews right now, cleaning subways, you name it. So we think it has relevance. We think it has utility, but also it feels like everybody just needs a really good escapist read right now. So we hope it has that for people as well. You can check out more about it at all the different sites that you buy books right now. Be good, social distance, do it online. So it's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. There's great sites like IndieBound and Bookshop that support local bookstores. You buy online, but it goes to that local bookstore. And then I think Josh also popped up a coupon at a site called Porchlight that has a discount for members of this community. So again, really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about it, and hope you give it a chance. And you can also check out more about the book at burninbook.com. Thanks again, and have a great Memorial Day weekend.
All right. Thanks, Peter. And thanks to everybody who's joined us today and over the past couple of days in the last few of these sessions. So, again, have a great weekend. Enjoy your Memorial Day. Remember what it's all about. Remember the sacrifice of those heroes who gave their lives, the balance of the rest of their lives, so that you could live in America or wherever you are and do the things that you're doing and you're enjoying. All right. Have a good one. We'll see you guys next week.